There's a moment, and if you felt it, you know exactly what I mean, when you lock eyes with someone and the world seems to fall away. You don't know her name. You don't know if she's good for you, bad for you, or completely indifferent. But none of that matters. Something ancient stirs in you, a gravitational force you didn't choose. That's not love. That's not lust. That's something deeper. Carl Jung would call it a projection of the anima, the feminine part of your unconscious, the part you've buried, ignored, or lost. When she appears in the world, she doesn't come quietly. She erupts into your awareness, not as a person, but as a symbol, a mirror, a riddle wrapped in flesh. And that's where the danger begins. Because here's the darkest truth about sexual attraction. It's rarely about the other person. It's about what they awaken in you, what you lack, what you've hidden from yourself. And unless you've made peace with that part of your psyche, you will keep falling over and over, not for women, but for ghosts of your own unconscious desires. This is why your most intense attractions are often your most destructive. Not because she was toxic, not because it wasn't meant to be, but because you weren't ready to meet yourself. The lie of physical chemistry. We're taught to chase chemistry, the spark, the butterflies, the obsession. But chemistry is a trap when it comes from unresolved wounds. You think, she completes me. But Jung would say, she reflects the incomplete you. What you call passion might just be projection. What you call connection might be a collision between two fractured psyches trying to feel whole for 5 minutes before everything implodes. And if you're a man who hasn't done the inner work, here's the pattern you'll keep repeating. You'll meet a woman who feels like a dream. You'll dive in head first. You'll give too much too soon. And she'll either lose interest or break you. Because deep down, you weren't chasing her. You were chasing a lost part of yourself. And you handed her the responsibility of giving it back. That's not attraction. That's dependency in disguise. She's not who you think she is, Jung said. When an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. If you don't become aware of your hidden emotional patterns, your trauma, your suppressed longings, they will manifest as people who haunt you. Not physically, psychologically. She will feel irresistible not because she's your soulmate, but because she triggers a buried narrative you've never rewritten. That's why even after it ends, even after she walks away or betrays you, a part of you still feels chained to her. That was never love. That was your shadow trying to speak. And here's the brutal twist. The more intensely you're drawn to someone, the more suspicious you should be, not of them, of your own projections. Why men are especially vulnerable. Men are not taught emotional literacy. We're taught to act, to pursue, to conquer. But emotional awareness, that's called soft. So what happens? You become a stranger to your own inner world. And that void becomes a magnet, pulling you toward the first woman who offers relief from the silence inside. You think it's fate, but it's hunger. You think it's chemistry, but it's confusion. You fall for women who trigger your wounds. You confuse chaos with passion. And worst of all, you romanticize your own suffering because you've been conditioned to chase highs instead of healing. The wake-up call. This is not a call to fear attraction. It's a call to understand it. Because the only way to escape the cycle is to make the unconscious conscious. When a woman triggers something powerful in you, pause, reflect. Ask yourself, what part of me is responding? What am I seeing in her that I'm missing in myself? Am I actually attracted to her, or to the way she distracts me from my emptiness? The answers won't always be easy, but they'll be honest. And from that honesty, you'll find something more powerful than infatuation, clarity. When Carl Jung spoke about the anima, he wasn't just theorizing, he was warning. He saw that the modern man had become spiritually disconnected, emotionally numb, and psychically divided. So when a woman entered his life who resonated with the anima, the internal image of feminine energy, she wasn't merely attractive, she was intoxicating. The anima is not a woman. She is the feminine force within a man's psyche. Wild, mysterious, chaotic, nurturing, seductive, or even destructive. She emerges in dreams, fantasies, compulsions, and especially in our attractions. So when you feel a magnetic pull toward a woman, it might not be her you're drawn to. It might be what she represents inside you. Not a person, a symbol. But here's the trap. Most men don't know they're projecting. They think they've met the one. In reality, they've met a mirror that reflects what they've suppressed. Emotional openness, vulnerability, intuition, creativity, chaos, sensitivity, all the things they were taught to fear or hide. And that projection fuels obsession. The more you lack, the stronger the pull. Jung made it painfully clear. The less developed a man's inner feminine, the more likely he is to project it onto a woman. This is why the guy who never cried, never reflected, never looked inward, falls hard. Why he says, "I can't stop thinking about her," even though they barely know each other. Why he spirals when she pulls away. Why he feels empty when she leaves. Because he didn't lose a relationship. He lost contact with the part of himself he thought she was giving him. If you don't develop your anima internally, you will chase her externally, and she will always elude you. And the most painful part? You will keep repeating this cycle with different women, thinking this time it will be different. But the face may change. The pattern does not. The addiction to idealization of sexual attraction, when built on anima projection, becomes an addiction to fantasy. You're not turned on by the real woman. You're turned on by what she symbolizes. She doesn't have to say the right thing. She doesn't have to love you well. She just has to exist in a way that fits the script you're unconsciously projecting. And this is why so many men fall for women who are emotionally unavailable, manipulative, or even harmful, because the image is stronger than the reality. Your brain craves the illusion more than it desires the truth. And that's not love. That's psychological dependence masquerading as romance. Why breakups hurt so much? Let's say she leaves. Why does it feel like your soul has been ripped apart? Because it's not just about her absence. It's about the collapse of the fantasy. You projected all your unmet needs onto her. You gave her your emotional world to carry. You made her the goddess, the muse, the healer, the answer. And when she walked away, she took all of that with her. That wasn't heartbreak, that was withdrawal. Withdrawal from the anima projection, from the belief that someone else could complete you. What real masculine power looks like. True masculine power doesn't come from conquering women. It comes from integrating the anima, from knowing your emotional needs, from facing your loneliness, from building your own inner wholeness so you're no longer chasing completion in someone else. When you develop the inner feminine, you stop needing it from the outside. You stop getting lost in illusions. You see clearly, and you attract differently. You no longer fall for women who confuse you. You no longer crave the chaos. You no longer surrender your soul to fantasy. Instead, you walk with groundedness, with sovereignty, with the kind of presence that no longer needs to be saved or seduced. There's a brutal paradox hidden inside every strong man. The more he seeks order, the more chaos seduces him. This isn't weakness, it's archetypal. Carl Jung believed that psychological opposites naturally attract. And for the man who's disciplined, grounded, and rational, it's often the chaotic feminine that pulls him in like gravity. She's spontaneous, unpredictable, emotionally wild. She laughs loudly, cries suddenly, vanishes without warning, and reappears just when you've rebuilt your walls. And despite everything, you can't look away. You think you're choosing her, but she's choosing your wound. Jung would argue you're not falling for her. You're falling into a part of yourself that you've neglected. The chaos she brings matches the emotional chaos you've refused to confront. Her unpredictability mirrors the instability inside your own suppressed desires. The highs and lows of the relationship feel like a drug because they awaken parts of you that your stoic masculine persona buried alive. And this is where it gets dark, because your unconscious doesn't care if it's healthy, it only cares if it's alive. And for many men, chaos feels more alive than comfort. That's why calm women sometimes don't excite you, why stability feels boring, why you think peace equals weakness. It's not her that's the problem. It's your trauma-addicted nervous system that equates emotional intensity with love. The seduction of being needed. Some women are not seeking love. They're seeking a man to regulate their emotional storm. And for the man who longs to be needed, this feels like a mission. You think, I can handle her. She just needs someone who won't leave. She's never had a real man before. And suddenly, you're playing the role of her savior while losing yourself in the process. You confuse chaos for passion, dysfunction for depth, drama for destiny. And every time you patch her wounds, you ignore your own. Why most men confuse chemistry with compatibility. Sexual attraction is powerful, but it's also deceptive. Chemistry isn't always connection, it can be collision. Two trauma patterns that spark like fire but burn everything they touch. Carl Jung knew that without self-awareness, you're not in love. You're possessed by projection, by unmet needs, by the unconscious desire to fix your past through someone else's body. And that kind of attraction is just reenactment, a psychological loop that keeps you chasing, bleeding, and calling it love. Shadow desires you don't want to admit. Here's the most uncomfortable truth. Some men are turned on by rejection, by emotional distance, by being made to prove themselves. Why? Because their shadow craves struggle. It equates suffering with significance. If she makes you chase, you feel alive. If she withholds, you feel the urge to conquer. If she humiliates you, you rationalize it as the cost of passion. But all of that is just unresolved pain looking for a stage to play out. Until you confront it, you'll keep mistaking punishment for intimacy. When you master your energy, you shift the game. The moment you become aware of these unconscious pulls, you stop reacting. You stop letting your attraction choose for you. You ask, is this woman nurturing my growth or feeding my wound? Is this desire clean or is it survival-based? Am I loving her or am I using her to fill a hole in my soul? This is when your masculinity matures, not when you suppress your desire, but when you lead it. You become a man who sees clearly and therefore chooses powerfully. You no longer chase women who mirror your chaos. You attract women who respect your clarity because you're no longer projecting your anima. You've integrated her. And from that point on, you no longer fall in love with illusions. You meet women soul to soul. Most people think sexual attraction is about chemistry, dopamine, hormones, desire. But Jung would say it's about projection. You're not drawn to who they are. You're drawn to who they represent, to something your unconscious has assigned them to be. The moment you feel that intense spark, ask yourself, do I want her or do I want what I've made her mean? Because the deeper truth is this: most of your romantic impulses are not conscious choices. They're scripts written by your past. Your anima chooses for you until you meet her. In Jungian psychology, the anima is the unconscious feminine within the man. She shapes your preferences, fantasies, and attractions, especially if you haven't made her conscious. This is why you keep choosing women who look different but act the same. Why you keep reliving the same heartbreak with a new face. It's not because you're cursed. It's because your anima is choosing from your wounds. The women who trigger you the most are often the ones your unconscious thinks will finally heal you. But they never do. Because until you integrate the anima, until you understand your own feminine shadow, you will always confuse emotional hunger for love, the seduction of suffering. Some men are secretly addicted to painful women, not because they enjoy suffering, but because suffering feels familiar. They grew up around chaos. They equated love with walking on eggshells. They learned that being loved means being tolerated, tested, or abandoned. So when they meet a woman who mirrors that pattern, it feels like home. And worse, it feels romantic. She's complicated, but special. She doesn't open up easily. That makes her worth it. She pushes me away, so I have to prove myself. That's not love. That's trauma bonding. And unless you see it for what it is, you'll spend your life trying to earn the love of people who use your effort as fuel for their control. Most men don't know what real intimacy feels like. Let this sink in. If all you've known is intensity, then calm will feel empty. If all you've known is proving your worth, then receiving love freely will feel suspicious. If all you've known is drama, then peace will feel like something's wrong. That's why a healthy woman often doesn't turn you on, because your nervous system only associates love with danger. Carl Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate. In this case, you'll call it my type. But it's not your type. It's your unresolved trauma steering the wheel. How to break the spell. You want to change this pattern. Don't start by changing your partner. Start by changing what you're attracted to. That means doing the work. Journal your past relationships and identify repeating emotional dynamics. Notice what triggers obsession versus genuine connection. Observe how your body reacts to peace. Does it resist it? Ask yourself, what part of me is choosing this woman? My conscious self or my wounded child? Because the moment you choose from awareness instead of compulsion, you shift everything. You stop chasing intensity. You start craving reciprocity. You stop overvaluing beauty. You start respecting emotional stability. You stop trying to fix women. You start expecting them to meet you. And just like that, you're no longer the boy looking for a mother in disguise. You're the man who's healed enough to choose love, not just familiarity. It's not about denying attraction, it's about leading. Its sexual energy is powerful. It can create life or destroy yours. Jung never said to kill the instinct. He said to consciously integrate it. So instead of being possessed by desire, you become the one who channels it. You walk into the fire without getting burned. You face the feminine without losing your frame. You experience love without abandoning yourself. That's not repression. That's sovereignty. That's the path of a man who doesn't just feel attraction, he understands it. And that makes him rare. We've reached the final, most dangerous truth. The one nobody tells you. Because if men really understood it, everything would change. You don't need to be more attractive to women. You need to stop being addicted to their approval. Let that settle, because as long as you crave their validation, you'll play a role. You'll betray yourself. You'll suppress your truth, soften your strength, and shrink your presence just to be liked. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. And here's the brutal irony. The more you chase being liked, the less respect you'll get. And the less respect you get, the less truly desired you'll ever be. The most attractive man is emotionally independent. Women don't obsess over men who chase them. They obsess over men who don't need them. Not because those men are cruel or distant, but because they are whole. They carry a grounded presence that says, I don't need to prove myself. I don't argue to be understood. I don't chase, I attract. And I would rather be alone than betray who I am. That's the kind of man who shakes a woman's reality. Because he's not trying to win her over. He's inviting her to rise up or walk away. The power of holding frame. When a woman tests you, pulls away, or throws emotional chaos your way, she's not always trying to hurt you. Sometimes she's unconsciously checking if you'll abandon yourself to please her. Every time you bend your truth to avoid tension, every time you tiptoe around your needs, every time you let drama dictate the tone of the relationship, you lose a piece of your masculinity. Hold and frame doesn't mean controlling her. It means staying rooted in you, your values, your standards, your path, no matter what. Because nothing is more attractive or more rare than a man who can stay calm in the storm and unshaken in the face of seduction. Shadow work makes you irresistible. You want to be truly magnetic? Start here. Face the parts of yourself you hide, the shame, the guilt, the cravings, the anger, the insecurities. Jung said, "The gold is in the shadow." The very qualities you've disowned, your assertiveness, your primal energy, your raw confidence, are the traits that turn you into a man women feel on a cellular level. But most men suppress them. They want to be safe, nice, acceptable, and they end up invisible. You want to be unforgettable? Reclaim your darkness and lead it with light. Don't be possessed by love, command it. Here's the final truth. Most men are not lovers. They are hostages to their desire. They fall in love with illusions. They chase validation disguised as affection. They confuse emotional dependency with connection. But a real man, he doesn't get swept away by the feminine. He dances with it. He doesn't lose himself in her presence. He brings her deeper into his. He doesn't need her to complete him. He chooses her from wholeness. That is power. That is sovereignty. That is the man who doesn't fear sexual energy because he's integrated it. Closing message: the world doesn't need more emotionally fragile men pretending to be strong. It needs more men willing to face their shadows, confront their desires, and stand tall, even when seduction pulls hardest. You don't need tricks, tactics, or manipulation. You need awareness. You need integrity. You need the courage to look at what most men run from, and the discipline to stay rooted in who you truly are. Because in a world of men chasing illusions, the one who sees clearly and walks with purpose is not just rare, he's unstoppable.